Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is Alice Burke speaking. In one of our continuing series, skills series, we are today talking about customizing Dynamics 365 sales and customer engagement. So this is the CRM solution that Microsoft has had for 20 years, essentially, but it's evolved over the years. And so today we're talking about the Dynamics 365 sales module, which is part of the overall customer engagement program. So its primary purpose, is sales opportunities and lead management and customer management, but it also does things, can be extended to do other things. And so we have customers who use it for all different purposes, all different reasons. In addition to the sales module, there are Dynamics 365 for marketing, which is specific to marketing, field service, customer service, and project operations. Those are all just flavors of the same tool built in the same environment. The environment that they're all in is called Power Apps. The database behind that, where all the data is stored, is called Dataverse. It used to be called Common Data Service, but now they've been calling it Dataverse for a few years. So this is how it's licensed, and obviously this changes occasionally, but for the most part, most of our customers fit in the Dynamics 365 Sales Enterprise level. That allows you to do a lot of customization and integration. And so that's where we generally put people, and that gives them access to the Power Platform for things like Power Automate, which is, of course, building automations within Dynamics, and then also building additional apps that can live either inside of the Dynamics system or outside, and they can be embedded in the Microsoft Teams program. They can be put on a mobile device, etc. So anyway, and then the Sales Premium. This is more sales intelligence based and sort of sales process based. So I don't see a whole lot of folks using that in my line of business, but certainly it's available. And then there also is the LinkedIn Sales Navigator integration, which is really neat for folks who are out using Sales Navigator. Right now, there's a promotion for brand new customers. It's 16.67% off, and it's valid till next June. So anyone who's new to the Power Platform or Dynamics 365 can take advantage of that discount. There's also a discount, or at least there was until recently, for folks who were moving from the traditional licensing model that they had, the subscription model that they used to allow, to what they call the new commerce experience. And that is, I can't exactly remember, but I think it's around 20%. So obviously, either of those promotions, if you're interested in them, reach out to me or anyone at AIM. That's sales@aim-technologies.com. I'll put that information up at the end. So one of the most important parts of doing customizations in Dynamics 365 is actually planning the customizations ahead of time. So asking yourself the questions on this screen. What business problem are we trying to solve? What are we going to bring data in from another environment, from spreadsheet, etc.? Who are the users? How will they access it? Is there automation that we can use to make their experience better? What data can be consolidated? That basically means if right now we're storing data in spreadsheets in a different database, and maybe, on paper, can we consolidate that into a single point of truth, which would be your dynamic system training and customization support? Those are really important things to consider for the future. A lot of customers ask themselves, what is the cost of not doing these customizations versus the cost of these customizations? And those can be hard costs and soft costs, certainly. Who should have access? Obviously, security is a paramount concern. Microsoft is taking care of a lot of that security, but there is still role-based and team-based security that you'll need to address. should there be any validation or controls on our customizations, and who's going to do the user acceptance and make sure that it does exactly what it's supposed to do. So those are the considerations that we ask before we start building any customizations. Now, the cool thing about Dynamics 365 and Power Platform in general is that it is low code. And so what that means is that you do not have to be a developer to do basic customizations. That includes things like adding fields and, creating lists and maybe even doing some formulas because and calculations, because if you're doing that in Excel, there's no reason you couldn't do that in Dynamics. Now, of course, there is some advanced programming functionality that clients need that they'll need a developer or somebody who with a little more of the technical background. Those things like APIs or maybe help with the flows, things like that. So, but the good news is for the vast majority of customizations, users can do these. Well, I wouldn't say everyday users, but like administrative users can do these pretty regularly. So today, my example scenario, we're going to pretend we are an appliance repair company. Again, if you were on my Power Automate or Power Apps demo a couple of weeks ago, we're the same appliance repair company. But right now, this repair company has data that perhaps is stored in paper files and Excel spreadsheets about their customers. And they, have repair technicians out in the field who need to know what appliances the customers have. And there's also customer service people in the office that need to know when someone calls, oh, right, you're calling about, your Samsung refrigerator. And then, of course, accounting users need to be able to reference that information as well. So putting this data into a single place and providing it throughout the organization is paramount. And the organization just also had a great idea. They decided, well, if we have all this information, why can't we use it to market new products and new warranties and new services to our customers? So we can go in and mine that information and say, well, you might have a refrigerator that's 12 years old and the warranty's out. Maybe it's time to think about, offering a new refrigerator. So that's the scenario that we're working with. And, I obviously did not go through all of these questions, but I went through quite a few of them for the purpose of this demo. So I'm just going to log into Power Apps right now and take you through, adding a few fields. So our data structure, we're going to add a custom table to Dynamics 365 for sales to contain the appliance and warranty information. It's just going to be one table. And then the account's going to be related back to the account table. I'm sorry, the appliance table is going to be related back to the accounts table. So that when you look at an account, you can see one customer and they can have multiple appliances. So it could be a list of all of the appliances that they've purchased from us or that we service. The appliances, obviously should be viewable from the customer's main form so that if they call, someone pulls up the customer, it's right there. And then the field lists, the form layouts, the views, those should all be documented and, prepared for this customization. So for example, this is going to be what my appliance table is going to look like. It's going to have these fields, and these are the data types of those fields. Notice you can add text fields, choice fields, date fields, lookup fields, and actually there's, quite a few other types of fields that you can add, but those are the ones that we're going to add today. And then we'll do a little, we'll talk about the relationship. So this customer lookup to account table, that's where the relationship is going to to come into play. So here we are. Sorry. All right. So again, our CRM, Dynamics 365, lives in this Power Apps environment. So here we are in Power Apps. This is the homepage, and it's got, some templated options and starting points, but I know exactly where I want to go. I want to go down into my solutions, and I'd like to build a new solution. I actually started one. The reason I like to build new solutions is because if I'm developing in a sandbox environment, I like to keep everything together, and then I can move it into my production environment without having to completely, move everything over to production. So I went ahead and I added a new table. So this table that I'm adding, it was appliance. And so appliance got created, and it actually, I'm going to go ahead and add a new table, a completely new table for this demo, because um, there's options to choose. So I want to show those. So we'll call this equipment instead of appliances. And then I'm going to enable attachments, including notes and files. That way, if I need to add notes and files to a particular piece of equipment that someone owns, maybe their handbook, their manual, things like that, I can do that. The type that I'm going to choose is a standard table. Now, notice you can add activity and virtual tables. Those are just different. They have just different settings for the types of tables that they are. Record ownership, it's going to be owned by a user or a team. You could set it to organization, but that's usually more for master records. This is more for individual records like contacts, accounts, things like that. You could choose a table image. I'm just going to skip that for now. There's a lot of options down here for creating a table, like applying this duplicate detection rule. I'm going to turn that off, but I am going to audit changes to its data so that if someone makes a change, we'll have the timestamp and all of that good stuff. I'm going to leverage the quick create form, because if somebody wants to easily add a refrigerator with just a few fields, we don't need a whole big new form. We can do it with a quick create. That's just sort of a side panel that opens just like this on a screen. I don't need to do a mail merge. I don't really need to set up SharePoint document management, although I could. If there was a reason to, for example, in the account table, I do have that turned on so that I can share or upload documents related to that account and keep them in my SharePoint, but also be able to view them and access them and create them inside of my CRM. Then the rows, these are all, it depends on the type of table as to whether or not you need these. I'm going to leave them all unchecked. The one that I use most often is can I have a contact email. So that's if it's like a contact record or a record that I need to be able to send an email to, then I would check that. But I don't need to be able to send a record to or an email to an appliance. Can be taken offline. This can be occasionally helpful for folks that don't have internet access and they need to take their records offline, but I don't find that very often anymore. It used to be really common. Whether or not it appears in search results, yeah, we can do that. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and save that. I pretty much picked the same variables for appliance as I did for equipment. So I'm going to go back into appliance because that one actually makes more sense in the context of this demo. There we go. All right, let's go into appliance. So notice we're in the same sort of screen. We have our schema, which are the columns. Columns are just the fields that are in a table. Relationships, that's how tables are related to each other. Keys we don't really use too much. Forms are the things that people see, but have the data on them. Views are lists that people see that have the data on them, usually a summary. Charts, dashboards, those are self-explanatory. Business rules we use a lot for like the data validation that I mentioned earlier. So, if you try to enter something into a field that it doesn't match a certain validation rule, it'll give you an error. Or another thing that we do is we use it to show or hide fields as necessary. So if, for a user, if the field isn't needed for a certain type of appliance, then we would just hide it so that they wouldn't think that they had to complete the field, things like that. Or I could make things required, not required. I'm going to go ahead and add some of those columns that I mentioned earlier. So let's see. So actually I already added a brand, and that was choice. So when I added that, it gave me the option of adding a global choice or not a global choice. Most times I actually do use the global choice, but for this demo, it was quicker to not. So the options that folks have. Maybe we only work on these four brands. So that's what I did. And I didn't choose a default choice. The customer, the date of purchase, these are all when you create them. It asks you what the data type is and what the format is. I chose date only. I could have chosen date and time, but date only because I don't necessarily care what time someone purchased a piece of an appliance, just that they did. Let's see what else. What other fields do we have? Name. Okay, so the name, this is actually a default field that gets added when you create a new table. And so it's by default, it's called name. It's a single line of text, and it is business required because it's almost like the key field. It isn't the primary key, but it's almost like it. So whenever you do lookups and stuff, this is what you see. But this works for our purpose because we're going to say refrigerator or that dishwasher, and that's what we're going to put in this field. Let's see. I haven't added the model number yet. So I'm going to add that one. Now I'm just going to do, again, with model number, I'm going to do a single line of text. I'm going to do a simple behavior, but I wanted to call your attention to the calculated behavior. This is, for example, if I was using maybe a date field or an integer field, I could do some math on that field. Or since it's a text field, I could do a lookup to another, or not a lookup, but it's kind of a lookup. So where I can pull some data off of a related field and put it onto this record. So let's say this is related to the customer. I just want to show the customer's phone number on this record, but I'm not actually storing that number. I'm just putting it in a calculated field. Do that all the time. So calculated fields can be really, really powerful. I'm not going to make this a required field, although maybe I should. I'll make it business recommended. That puts a little blue star next to it. I can change the character count. I can enable column security. I enabled auditing earlier, so that's going to be in there, and I'm just going to save. Let's see, the warranty number. I'm going to add that. It's just kind of be pretty much the same information as the model number, so I'm just going to click the default. And then the status, whether it's an active or inactive appliance. So, once a client gets rid of it, you can mark it as inactive. That way it doesn't show in their list. But status field and status reason field are default options or fields that get included with every table. So you'll find those on every table. You can customize the status reason field. We're looking at the active option. I could say active, let's see, under warranty. And then if I wanted to, for inactive, if I wanted to say replaced, I don't know, in storage. I mean, we don't really probably need that much detail on the status of their appliance, but you could see where in other fields it might be helpful. For example, I have clients who on a contact record, the status of a contact could be active, and the status reason could be current customer or prospect or something along those lines. And if they were an inactive contact, the reason could be that they were deceased or they changed companies or left the industry. So there's a reason why that person has that status. So that's pretty common. And then the last thing that I need to do is add the relationship. I actually already did that. I made it called customer, and the related table is account, and it automatically creates this relationship name for me. So when I go to put all of these fields on one of my forms so that I can use this information, let's see what will happen. It will give me all of these fields that I've just created, and I can drag and drop them onto this form. Notice it automatically puts the name field because it's a required field, and it also puts the owner. Because we identify this as a user or team owned entity, every record is going to be owned by someone or some team. And that's a required field. If it's not useful, you can just hide it or ignore it if you don't have that concept of, ownership. But what ownership is used for in many cases is for security. And so when you're setting up a security role, maybe you don't want every user to see Alice Burke's records. Maybe you only want her to see her own. Or maybe everyone can see her records, but only she can create or edit them. Those types of things. That's where the ownership comes into play. So I'm just going to go and drag the rest of these fields in. This has changed over the years in many different iterations of Dynamics 365 to how this works, how the field editing works. But this is where we are with our latest iteration. Notice that I went ahead and dragged all of those things. Let me go ahead and drag status reason on too. So let's see. I think that's really all I need to put on the form. And I save it. Again, I didn't have to manually create a table relationship, which if you've done database development in the past, you know that is kind of challenging. So just by adding that lookup field from this table to the customer table, I now have it. Once I have these changes made, I can save it. I'm not going to publish just yet because that takes a minute. I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of my changes before I publish it. So I'm going to go back to my appliance entity or table, and I'm going to update the view. So I want an active appliance view, and this is going to be a list of all of my customers' active appliances. And so I can drag the brand in. I can drag maybe the model number and the warranty number, and let's do the customer. You'll notice by default that the created on field gets added. I usually remove it. It's not usually that meaningful. Sometimes it is, but for the most part, it's not. And then you'll notice that this active appliances view is already filtering to active. So I'm not going to put a status field on here because I know they're all active. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to I've already added the account table. This was an existing table that has all of my account information in it, but I'm going to add that list from that related table to this form. So if I add an existing form, I'm just going to use the main form that comes with the system. It probably doesn't have any modifications, although it could. This is my demo system. I tend to make lots of modifications over the years and just sort of leave them be. So as that loads, you're going to see this is your customer table or your account table. It's going to have my account name, sort of any of the related information that I need to know about them, their address. I might put it under assets and locations, this appliance list, or I might put it on the summary. I put it on the summary. That just makes things easier. So notice I can drag any of these unused fields from this list into the form, just like I was on the new form that we created. But I can also add things like new tabs, that's these guys up here, new sections, that's these boxes that group our fields, spacers, grids, and that's what I'm going to add. I'm going to add a subgrid, but there's also things like, these are actually controls. So you can add a Canvas app that's built with Power Apps. You can add an external website. You can add web resources, lots of things like that. Some inputs, media, AI stuff, and then more of the controls that are available if you have them. But like I said, I'm just going to add a grid or a subgrid. Oh, you know what? I need to add a section first. So let me add a one column section right here below the timeline. And I'm going to add my subgrid. I could put an editable grid that kind of behaves like an Excel spreadsheet where you can edit it in line, but I don't think I need to do that for this particular entity. So I'm just going to select to show related records. And the only thing that I'm going to see then are record tables that have relationships to my account. And this is the one I want, appliances. And I want active appliances because that's the view that I edited, and I hit done. So if I save, whoops, you know what I want to do? I'm going to hide this label because it's not meaningful. Maybe hide this label too. I might move this up. Let's see, I might move the whole thing up timeline. Here we go. Okay. There's other things that I can do in this form layout that I haven't really touched on. That's things like changing the layout, changing the column widths. I can add custom events. So these could be JavaScript or, well, mostly just JavaScript. I can also, when I'm clicking into any of these fields, for example, account name, I can add events, so like an on-change event. And I can make these read-only, or I can hide them all together. And I can add business rules. We talked about business rules earlier. So a good example of that would be if the relationship type or the type, let's see, company type was a public company, like the ownership was selected as public, then I would show the ticker symbol. Otherwise, I would not. Those types of things. So I'm just going to go ahead and publish the changes that I've made, and then we can go back into the other table and publish that as well, because otherwise we won't be able to see what we've done. Other changes that while this is happening, other changes that you can make customizations. You can obviously build your own controls that do certain things, like, you know, talking about this calendar or this Canvas app or a timeline, things like that. You can modify the web resources behind the scenes to add, you know, images, videos. You can modify the help files to be custom help. You can modify the sitemap, and I'll show you that in just a second. So I'm going to go back into all here, and that appliance table that I made so many changes to, I'm going to quickly publish that as well. Notice I don't have any apps here. So I'm just going to leave that alone and go back into my main. So that's my solution, that appliance solution. I'm going to go back into my main apps menu, and it's going to show all of the different apps that I have available. So if I go into the Sales Hub, this is sort of an out-of-the-box sitemap that has been created for, you know, just to get started. It's going to show me the accounts. It's going to show me all of the things that we're used to seeing in Dynamics: activities, dashboards, leads, opportunities, things like that. But when I go and open up an account, I now have this appliance box, and I can add new appliances to it. Oh, I didn't create a quick create form, so we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. And then let's see, we're going to do Maytag M1235. And then the warranty number. All right. So now anybody who pulls up this information for AdventureWorks can see they have a refrigerator and probably the list of the rest of their appliances that they need. But you notice that I don't have just a list of appliances here in my navigation. So it's really easy to quickly add that as well. So I'm going to go back into that Sales Hub app, and I'm going to edit it. And all I have to do in order to expose that application or that table is I'm going to go under customers, and I'm going to add a sub area, and the content type is going to be table, and the table is going to be clients, and bam. So now that's going to show up. I can actually change the icon here to one of the common ones that are in my system. Let's see, do we see anything that looks like a client? Well, we'll just go with a thermometer. I'm going to save, and I'm going to publish that real quick. And bam, you've extended the usability of your CRM system by quickly adding a table, a few fields, one relationship, and a change to the sitemap. If you have any questions, you know how to reach us through support, through our website, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and of course, you can always call.